Life after sports is a chapter where effort is invisible and rewards are delayed. Most people struggle not because sports failed them, but because nobody explained that the rules were about to change. And maybe that's the real lesson. Sports teach you how to push. Adulthood teaches you when not to. Growth is knowing the difference. That builds a different kind of discipline. Quieter, less dramatic, but more durable. There's also a philosophical shift that happens when people stop viewing their body as a tool for winning and start viewing it as something they have to live in for decades. Longevity changes the metric. Pain-free movement becomes more valuable than dominance. Consistency becomes more valuable than intensity. Sustainability becomes more impressive than sacrifice. Sports don't teach that well because they aren't designed to. They're designed to extract performance, not preserve systems. For many common people, the healthiest relationship with sports is retrospective, appreciating what they gave without expecting them to keep giving forever. Recognizing that they were a structured environment that helped you grow during a phase of life when structure was useful. But also recognizing that staying loyal to that identity past its expiration date can hold you back. What often happens after sports is either a void or a reinvention. Some people chase the feeling again. Rec leagues, extreme training, nostalgia-driven intensity. Others shut it all down and become sedentary. The ones who tend to thrive are the ones who reinterpret the lessons instead of reenacting the experience. They take the work ethic, not the schedule. The discipline, not the punishment. The movement, not the damage. The hardest truth is that sports don't prepare you for freedom. They prepare you for compliance within a system. Adulthood requires self-governance. The gym, personal training, or individualized movement practices force that adaptation. You're no longer proving yourself to anyone. You're maintaining something for yourself. So is it worth it for common people? In many cases, yes, but not for the reasons we were told. It wasn't worth it because of trophies or records. It was worth it because it introduced stress early, taught social navigation, and gave structure during a chaotic developmental window. But it stops being worth it when people cling to it as proof of value instead of seeing it as preparation. What happens after sports is where maturity shows up. Whether someone can let go without bitterness. Whether they can move forward without erasing the past. Whether they can build a new relationship with their body that's based on respect instead of punishment. Sports are a chapter where effort is visible and rewarded quickly. Life after sports is a chapter where effort is invisible and rewards are delayed. Most people struggle not because sports failed them, but because nobody explained that the rules were about to change. And maybe that's the real lesson. Sports teach you how to push. Adulthood teaches you when not to. Growth is knowing the difference. What almost nobody explains is that the post-sports transition isn't just psychological or emotional. It's biological, social, and economic all at once. When you leave sports, you're not just losing an identity. You're losing a bundled system that quietly handled dozens of life decisions for you. Your daily schedule was predetermined. Your peer group was built in. Your goals were clear. Your feedback loop was immediate. Your value, while conditional, was at least visible. Most adults never experience that level of structure again, and almost no one is taught how to replace it intentionally. One of the first shocks comes from time. Athletes grow up in hyper-compressed timelines. Seasons have start dates and end dates. You know exactly when things reset. There's always another tryout, another game, another cycle. That creates a sense that time is abundant and forgiving. Miss today, make it up tomorrow. Lose this season, there's another one next year. Adult life doesn't work like that. Time stretches, but opportunities don't necessarily repeat. Careers don't reset annually. Relationships don't have off seasons. Health doesn't reboot just because you want a fresh start. Many former athletes struggle here because they subconsciously expect life to offer rematches. When it doesn't, they interpret that as personal failure instead of a structural difference. There's also a social reckoning that hits later than people expect. In sports, proximity creates intimacy. You spend hours together every day. You suffer together. You win together. Bonds form quickly, even if they're situational. When sports end, those relationships often dissolve not because they weren't real, but because the shared container disappeared. Adult friendships require deliberate effort, vulnerability, and scheduling without an external authority forcing alignment. That's a new muscle. It leaks out as irritability, restlessness, nostalgia, or chronic dissatisfaction. Processing it doesn't mean glorifying the past. It means acknowledging that something meaningful ended. Physically, the transition is just as complex. Sports create asymmetries, compensations, and were patterns that don't announce themselves until years later. When training volume drops, but movement quality doesn't improve, injuries surface. Many former athletes either stop moving entirely because their body hurts, or they push through the same way they always did, worsening the damage. Neither approach works long-term. The body you had at 18 was resilient enough to survive bad decisions. The body you have later demands precision, recovery, and respect. Learning that is humbling for people who built confidence around physical capability. There's also an ego recalibration that has to happen. In sports, your ego is functional. It helps you compete. It protects you under pressure. It drives performance. Outside of sports, that same ego can become brittle. When you're no longer exceptional by default, clinging to past dominance creates quiet insecurity. The healthiest former athletes aren't the ones who deny their past or brag about it. They're the ones who integrate it without needing it to impress anyone. They let competence speak softly instead of announcing itself. One of the most important but uncomfortable realizations after sports is that discipline isn't a personality trait. It's an environment-dependent behavior. Most people who think they lost their discipline didn't lose anything. They lost the scaffolding that made discipline automatic. True discipline is self-directed and boring. It's waking up without a coach. It's training without a deadline. It's doing the work when the outcome isn't guaranteed. That's a different skill set, and it has to be learned from scratch. Former athletes often shame themselves here instead of recognizing they're beginners again. This is also where many people confront motivation myths. Sports motivation is largely extrinsic. You train because there's a game. You care because others are watching. You push because consequences are immediate. Adult motivation is mostly intrinsic or values-based. It requires connecting actions to long-term identity instead of short-term rewards. That transition is brutal for people who were never asked why they cared, only whether they performed. Learning to articulate personal values is unfamiliar terrain for many former athletes, but it's essential for sustainable drive. Another overlooked shift is how failure works. In sports, failure is public, but it's contained. You lose a game, review film, and move on. In adulthood, failure is quieter but heavier. It affects income, stability, relationships, and self-trust. There's no post-game speech, no clear lesson. Former athletes sometimes avoid risks in adulthood because failure now feels existential instead of instructional. Reframing failure as data again, without the spectacle, is a critical adaptation. There's also the question of control. Sports give you the illusion of control through preparation. Train harder, perform better. Life introduces randomness that effort can't neutralize. Health issues, market shifts, other people's choices. Accepting limited control doesn't mean becoming passive. It means reallocating effort toward what actually moves the needle instead of what just feels familiar. Many former athletes waste years overtraining parts of life that don't respond to brute force. At some point, the conversation turns toward legacy. In sports, legacy is finite. Records get broken. Names fade. That's uncomfortable for people whose sense of worth was tied to being remembered. Adult legacy is cumulative and invisible. It's built through reliability, mentorship, contribution, and character over decades. It doesn't peak early. It compounds slowly. This requires a patience that sports rarely reward, but adulthood demands. The most successful transitions after sports share a few patterns. First, they allow a decompression period instead of immediately filling the void with something equally intense. Second, They build identity around principles rather than roles. Third, they intentionally redesign structure instead of waiting for motivation to return. And fourth, they learn to respect their nervous system instead of constantly trying to overpower it. This is why movement, when reframed, becomes so important. Not as punishment, not as proof, but as maintenance and expression. Training becomes a way to regulate mood, manage stress, and preserve capacity, not chase superiority. The goal shifts from being impressive to being capable. That's a profound psychological upgrade, even if it feels anticlimactic at first. Eventually, most former athletes reach a quiet realization. The thing they missed wasn't the sport itself. It was the clarity, the simplicity, the feeling of being aligned with a purpose, even if that purpose was externally assigned. The work of adulthood is learning to create that alignment without being told, to decide what matters, how hard to push, and when to stop. That's why the real measure of whether sports were worth it isn't found in accolades. It's found in adaptability. Did sports give you tools you can repurpose, or habits you're trapped by? Did they teach you how to work, or only how to be worked? Did they prepare you to obey, or to choose? The people who struggle most after sports aren't weak. They're often the most committed, the most driven, the most conditioned. They just haven't yet learned that the rules changed. The scoreboard is gone. The crowd left. The responsibility is yours now. And that's not a loss. It's an invitation to redefine strength, to decouple worth from performance, to build a life where effort serves meaning instead of consuming it. Sports teach you how to give everything to something that ends. Life asks you to give enough to something that continues. The transition hurts because it requires restraint instead of excess, awareness instead of aggression, and ownership instead of instruction. That's the final lesson sports never teach, but adulthood insists on. What almost nobody tells you is that the real impact of sports doesn't show up while you're playing them. It shows up years later, after the practices stop, after the schedules disappear, after nobody is asking you what position you play anymore. That's when the question actually becomes real. Not was this fun, not did I make memories, but what did this shape me into, and did it still serve me once the structure was gone? For most common people, sports end quietly. There's no ceremony, no final whistle that feels important. One season you're just done, and life moves on without checking in. School ends, responsibilities change, bodies age, priorities shift, and suddenly something that once dictated your entire week doesn't exist anymore. That transition is where the long-term effects of sports actually live. A lot of former athletes struggle more than they admit after sports end, and it's not because they're weak or ungrateful. It's because sports outsource discipline, identity, and motivation. You didn't have to decide when